Hello, Yele Nation. I hope you're having a great day so far. So, today we're going to learn how to make the native trouser, or what we Yoruba people or Nigerian people call Sokoto. So, get ready to go with me on this little tutorial journey on how to create the men Sokoto. So the first thing I did was to fold my fabric into two like this. And to know the amount of fabric that you need to fold, you have to just add about 3.5 inches to your hip measurement divided by 4. So if your hip measurement is 40 divided into 4, that is 10, then add 3.5 inches to it. 1 inch of it is going to be your side seam allowance, so that is what I'm marking right now. I'm marking 1 inch from the top of my fabric to the bottom of my fabric, and then the remaining 2.5 inch will be the extension for your front crotch, and that is the reason why you are adding extra 3.5 inches to the circumference of your hips divided by 4. Now for the men, we don't call it hip, we call it seat. So it is the circumference of the seat divided by 4, and then you add 3.5 inches to it, and that will be the amount of fabric that you are folding over like this. And because it's on fold, that means it is going to be 27 inches, and when it's folded it becomes 13.5 inches. So it depends on what the circumference of your hips, or the seat divided by 4 is. Now after doing that, I drew my straight line of the 1 inch seam allowance to the side of my fabric like you just saw me do, and then I'm going to measure out the seat measurements divided by 4. So the seat I'm using is 42, divided by 4 is 10.5, and then I'm going to mark the 10.5 from my seam allowance line from the top all the way to the bottom. So after measuring all of that, I'm going to then join all my dots together to create a straight line that represents the circumference of my seat divided by 4. Now, the length of the trouser that I'm working on is about 34 inches. That's the final length that I want. So I'm going to add extra 4 inches to that 34 to make 38 inches. So the 38 inches is what I'm going to measure as the length of the fabric that I'm going to use. 2 inches on top of that is for the band, and the remaining 2 inches is for the hemming of the trouser. So I added 4 inches to 34, and then I'm marking 38 inches for the amount of the length, or for the length of the fabric that I will need to create this trouser. And then I'm joining the two marks at the top like that, so I know that that mark at the top is my reference point, or my reference line for the rest of my trouser. Then from my reference point, I'm going to mark down 3.5 inches on either side and join these two marks with a straight line. Now this 3.5 inches is representing the band that I'm going to use for the trouser. So the next thing is to measure 1.5 inches from the lower line. That is 1.5 inches. That 1.5 inches is going to be representing my waistband, and the line above that is going to be my waistline exactly. The 2 inches fold above it is going to also be part of my waistband, and I'm going to show you what that looks like later. So from my waistline is where I'm taking all my references except for the crotch depth. For the crotch depth, I'm not going to take my reference from the waistline, but the line below the waistline. That is the imaginary band, the bottom of the imaginary band, and that is where I'm going to take the measurement of my crotch depth. And to get the crotch depth, it is going to be your hip measurement divided by 4, and then you add 1 inch to that. So that means my crotch depth is 11.25 inches from the lower line, not from the waistline. That middle line is the waistline, but from the last line is where you are going to measure your crotch depth, or else your crotch is going to be too short, and that is 11.25 that I used for this particular client. Then I'm going to draw my crotch curve like you are seeing me do. It's just a nice curve. You can use your curve line, you can use freehand to draw this curve anyhow you want to do it. It's going to be fine, darling. Just make sure that you follow these easy sweet steps and you're good. So from the waistline is where I just marked my waist to knee, And then at the bottom, remember we added extra 2 inches. I'm going to cut out those extra 2 inches now, or draw it out, not literally cut it out. I'm going to draw it out now as my seam hemming, the hemming for the bottom of the trouser. That is 2 inches I just removed now, and then the 2 inches on top. Those are the inches that accounted for the extra 4 inches that I added to the main fabric. You know what I'm talking about if you've been listening to my video. If you have not been listening and you say, Yele, I didn't understand, God is watching you. See, as I'm taking my time to explain it, God is watching you. So the next step now is to account for something called the plumb line. So the plumb line is going to be the midpoint between the 2 lines you drew earlier, that is your seam allowance line and your hip line. If you watch what I'm doing closely, you will understand that I'm sharing those two lines. I'm looking for the middle of those 2 lines, and I'm sharing it into 2 equal parts. So the distance between my seam allowance line and the hip line is about 10.25. So I split that into 2. It's going to be 5.125 on either side of my plumb line. So that plumb line is like a reference line for my knee and for my ankle. So what I'm going to do next now is, from my waist, I measured my knee. I already did that before, but I'm doing it again so you can see it on the plumb line. And then I draw my knee line across that plumb line. Now, what I'm going to do is go back to my crotch line and then measure out the thigh. That's exactly what I did before. The thigh measurement was the entirety of the fabric that I folded. Just make sure that after your hip line, you still have extra 2.5 inches. So that is the exact amount that I needed for my thigh line, the entirety of the fabric so far. So the next thing now is to go to my knee. The knee measurement that I'm using is about 21.5, and then I'm going to split that into 4. Now when I split it into 4, I'm then going to share it on either sides of my knee line. So if I have 21.5 divided by 4, that is going to be about 5.125 thereabout, and I'm going to measure 5.125 on either sides of my knee line. Then I'm moving on to my ankle, and the ankle circumference is 14.5 inches. I'm going to split that into 4 as well, and then I'm going to have about 3.375 or thereabout on either side of my ankle measurement to make a total of 7.25. So what I'm going to then do is to join all my lines together. I'm going to join from my crotch line to my knee with a curved ruler. I almost use a straight ruler and spoil everything that I've been doing. My village people, they will never succeed. So I'm going to then use the straight part to join from the knee to the ankle, but the curved part is from the crotch to the knee. Then I'm just going to use the straight line to also join from my ankle to my knee on the other side. If you look at this, you see that this is quite a straightforward way to make the trouser. It's not like the female method. The female trouser is way more complicated, or a little bit more complicated than this. Now at the bottom, what I'm doing now is to add my 1 inch seam allowance from the knee all the way down to the hemming allowance, and I also extended the hemming allowance at the bottom. I did not add any seam allowance to the front side that has the crotch. Only the side seams have seam allowance. And now I am cutting out my front pattern as you are seeing me do. I'm going to cut out the crotch area now, and then all the way down to the side. The next step is then to cut the back pattern, and we're going to use the front pattern to cut the back pattern. There is not much to it, and nothing to it. There's not much to it, as I was saying. Like, there is not much addition to do between the back and the front pattern. It's just little differences here and there. So after placing my pattern, the front pattern, on the new fabric, all I have to do is to add extra 3 inches to the crotch area. actually extra 3.5 inches, actually 3.5 inches to the crotch area, and then I'm going to mark that extra 3.5, and everywhere else I'm going to add between 1.5 inch and 2 inches. But I added 2 inches to my own. You can add 1.5 if you want, but it shouldn't be less than 1.5. So I add 1.5 to the bottom, 3.5 to the crotch, 2 inches, not 1.5, and then 2 inches to the upper part. So 2 inches everywhere else, but 3.5 inches on the crotch area. And then I join all my marks. You see, I use it with my free hand. I didn't even need a curve to do all of that. When you are good, you are good. When you are exceptional, you are exceptional. I'm feeling myself, I'm ailing myself. Me too, no problem. Yeah. So after doing all of that, now I use the curve ruler to do that. I know I just stopped my shine right now after using freehand. My freehand was so perfect. I don't know why I decided to carry curve ruler. Just spoil all the hype that I've given myself. I just finished ailing myself, and now I have to unail myself. It is what it is. So after that, I'm just going to cut everything the way you are seeing me cut it, and that is just the easy part of making the back pattern. You see that we didn't have to raise the back in any way, unlike the female trouser where you have to raise the back. None of that. So this is what the waistband is supposed to look like. This is why we added that extra 3.5 inches or 4 inches to the top. Do you see how it's going to fold when it's time? That is how it's going to fold when it's time. But this is what we have so far: the front patterns and the back patterns. Next step now is to cut our pocket, because there is no Sokoto without pocket. The dimensions that you need for your pocket is 14 inches by 14 inches. Very simple and straightforward. Just cut 14 inches by 14 inches. Cut 2 of that, because you need pockets for both sides of your trouser, except if you just need pockets for one side of your trouser. I don't know how you're doing it, but fashion is fashion. So after doing that, I'm going to sew the front crotch together. Then I'll sew the back crotch together. You see these nice pockets that I added. If you want to know how to do that, go to my YouTube channel and find how to create welt pocket. It's the same procedure that I used to make these back pockets. My client wanted something special, and I came through like bended. Okay, so the back pocket was put in place, and you can watch the video on how I put the back pocket. I'm going to add the card up here so you can see what that looks like, or how to make your own back pocket look like that. So after sewing the front and back crotch, I now have to install my pocket. So I'm going to place the pocket right on the bottom mark. So that is going to be 3.5 inches from the top. So if you don't see your mark, just measure 3.5 inches from the top, place your pocket on that side, and then next thing is to draw this tiny, is it a rectangle that I'm drawing right now? So I went in by 0.75 inches, and then I go down by 6.5 inches, and then I draw. I also check that it is also 0.5 inches and 7.5 at that top, and then I join it like this. If you don't understand what I'm speaking, you can understand what I am doing, right? This is what it looks like when you finish doing that, and then you are going to sew on that yellow line that I marked. So I'm going to sew on and make a nice rectangular kind of thing. That thread was disturbing me. I had to cut it away before it spoiled my shine. Enough things have spoiled my shine today. We have to still shine bright like a diamond. Okay, so after sewing on my rectangular line like that, next step is to then notch that upper part and the lower part. So I'm going to notch it with the scissors. Make sure you don't cut through the thread. Do not cut through the thread. So I'm using my chalk to show you what the mark looks like. That's how you do it, and make sure that when you cut it, you do not cut into the thread, or all your add labor will just be add labor for nothing. God will not let that to happen. God will not shame us. Amen, in Jesus' name. So after doing that, I'm then going to take it to the ironing board to iron it out, to make sure that those parts lay flat and nice and sweet and beautiful. So now I have laid it on my smooth operator. That's the name of my ironing board. And then I'm going to iron this part that we just finished sewing now. Look at how flat and how sweet and how kind and how beautiful it's supposed to look. Did I just say my pocket is kind? Yes, I did. Why? I don't even know. So after doing that, you see the way I folded it like that, and then you fold it in. This is what we are going for. Our pocket is already coming together, is already forming, is already looking kind. So you go to the bottom of your pocket. The bottom of the pocket is like this, and you turn it inside out first. So what you are going to do is you are first of all going to sew on the right side, because this pocket is going to hold a lot of things. It's going to hold your phone, it's going to hold your wallet, so you want to make sure that the pocket is reinforced. So I first of all sew on the right side, then I'm going to turn it inside out and then sew on the wrong side. So that means you are sewing on your pocket twice. This pocket has double ammunition. No weapon fashioned against the pocket can come to pass. The same way no weapon fashioned against you will come to pass or will prosper in Jesus' name. Amen. So after sewing on the wrong side like that, you have your pocket ready and reinforced twice. And then this is what we have, our nice pocket. And then I'm going to pin it up, and then we'll move to the next step. As you might have noticed, if you are paying good attention, I didn't talk about sewing the upper part. That is because the band is going to close the upper part of the pocket, so we don't need to do double work. We are just going to close the bottom part, and then our band will help us to do the rest of the work. Isn't that brilliant? Yes, it is. If you like, don't hype me, I hype myself. So then next thing is to sew the sides together. So I will place the back on top of the front side and sew both sides together. I'm going to start from the bottom to the top, because that is how we claw our way through life. But anyway, I'm starting from the bottom all the way to the top, and then I'm going to make sure that my pocket is laying flat as I am sewing it, and I don't sew together the opening of my pocket as well. So I have laid both of them side by side. I have sewn the pocket. We have overcome, and this is our pocket, all nice, all set, all beautiful, and there is nothing to worry about. It's very simple and straight to the point. Then the bottom of the of my pants, I folded it in like that with iron, and I folded by 0.5, then folded by 1 inch with iron, so it will be easy for me to just sew it all the way to the to the side to side. Then the next step is to join the hem of our crotch for the front and back together. After joining it like that, you can pin it so it is seam to seam. Make sure that the seams match. You pin it together, and then you can sew from the middle, which is the seam, to one end of your trouser, and sew from the middle also to the other end of your trouser. Now, after doing this nice step, you will notice that our trouser, like, it is already almost done. It is already put together, and it is not as difficult as you thought it was. Is it? Is it? Let me know in the comment section if it is easier than you thought. Look at our trouser, it's looking nice. Yeah, so the next part is to put in our band, or to fold in our band, because we already added the band to the trouser when we were cutting it, remember? So we just have to fold in our band. Now, the one thing you need to know is that there is supposed to be a hole there for you to pass your thread through. So I'm going to go back into the front of my trouser, open it up like you have seen me open up, so that I can have that hole to pass a rope for my Sokoto. So after opening it up, I'm going to fold it on either side, iron out the fold, so it will be easy for me to sew it down on either side of the trouser like that. So this is it folded. I'm just going to sew it down on either side, so stitch it down, and also stitch a stopping stitch at that bottom where I loosed, so it doesn't keep loosening over and over, till my entire front trouser disintegrates. Anyway, so after doing that, I'm then going to now fold it 0.5 inches first, and then 1.5 inch to the hem, or to the waist hem of my trouser. After doing that, I'm going to use the ironing to iron everything. You see the pocket area, look at the pocket area, see how I'm going to fold it 0.5 and then fold it on top of my pocket like that, and iron it so that it will be easy for me to stitch, and I will not have any problem when it is time for me to stitch my stuff together. And then I pinned the part that needs to be pinned. I will not lie, I only pinned the part with the pocket because everything else I don't have to pin it. But maybe you should pin yours so that it will come out very clean and neat like my own. So this is what we have. I stitched all the way around, and you see that my opening is still there, and it's through that opening that I'm going to pass this rope that we are about to make. So for my rope, all you need is your hip measurement multiplied by 2, and that should be enough for your rope. In fact, that might be too much. So whatever your waist measurement is, add maybe 20 inches extra to it. And this is how you are going to fold it and sew all along for the entirety of your rope. So I didn't have enough to make a long continuous rope, so I just made 3 pieces, put them together, and made my rope. And now I'm passing it through the hole with a safety pin, through the waistband hole with a safety pin, and then I'm just going to draw it or pull it or shall bring it out of my trouser one way or the other. So after doing that, I remove my pin, and I'm going to then tie the ends of my rope. Let me show you how I tie the end of the rope. You just roll it around your hand, put it inside like that, and voila, your knot is ready. You are knotting it so that the knot doesn't disappear into the hole of the waistband by some mistake or something like that. So after doing that, you see that our trouser is ready. It is ready to be worn. Look at the back. The back is looking so dope. Look at the front is looking dope. Look at the pockets. And please, if after watching this tutorial you recreated this trouser, make sure you tag me on Instagram at Yele Stitches. Don't forget to like this video, share it, and subscribe to my channel. Till next time, bye.